have in the studio, yes, like I told you, John Koko, a former chairman of the Nigeria Environmental Society. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Okay, all right. We also have Desmond Majekodumi, an environmentalist, joins us via Skype. Many thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Majekodumi.
Okay, gentlemen, let's just begin. Maybe I should start with you, Majekodumi. I mean, you have been at the forefront of, bringing this state of environment, whether it is in Ogoni land or anywhere else in Nigeria, to the front burner. What does this Ogoni cleanup mean for you? And what do you think it will mean for the people of Ogoni too?
Well, the first most significant factor, I believe, is the fact that if the people come together and say the same thing loud enough, long enough, their voice will be effective. And that's exactly what has happened in this particular area. It's unfortunate that the people of Ogoni, of Niger Delta, of Nigeria generally, had not spoken louder a lot earlier. Because what has happened to those people in that particular area and its environs could be considered in some quarters as a crime against humanity. When you read the UNEP report, you will shed tears, because the UNEP report was very scientifically done and it showed us the level of pollution. One aspect of that report, which I need to remind ourselves about, was when they said the level of benzene, okay, that's a chemical that comes from oil, the level of benzene in the Eleme local government area was 900 times above safe levels. Benzene is a very virulent carcinogenic. So what has actually happened is that people in that area will definitely have been afflicted by this benzene, particularly the children in whom it causes leukemia. If you check the medical records in that place, that's if you could find any decent clinics that have been set up, but if you check the records, you will find that many children have succumbed to leukemia in that area. So the fact that the cleanup has started is really, really encouraging, and it means that the voice of the people of Nigeria is being heard and is being acted upon. I am overjoyed, at least at the start of the process.
All right, Mr. Ekoko, this is not the first time attempts have been made to clean up Ogoni land. Do you know what challenges were then, and if any possibility that those challenges may resurface now?
Thank you very much. The Ogoni issue was a simple issue that was blown out of proportion by neglect. I'll put it simply like this. This morning, as I was coming in, I saw those beautiful flowers that beautify the place, that give me peace inside. Through carelessness, you can destroy those flowers. And the beauty that it gave, we will lose it. The flower is living itself, it doesn't know whether I'm passing or not. Ogoni land was a simple issue of basic, contaminants entering the land. When it became a real problem, the people spoke. Though they could not articulate themselves, they were fortunate to have Kensaro Wiwa, who articulated clearly, look at what we are suffering. Very sadly, because we do not regard human beings, especially the weak ones. It was seen as a threat to the state, and it was silenced. Very sadly today, we listen to militants. It shouldn't be. I grew up in that area. And I know the woman selling fish knows how much her livelihood has been affected. The man who is doing either forestry or fishing or agric, you need to be there to see. My Egbon Majekodumi, of course, we know each other very well. He's presented his paper before. The level of cancer caused by benzene is unspeakable. Why? Because instead of taming it when it was 1 year or 2 years, we allowed 50 years to pass. And rather than do a wholehearted attempt at restoring the land, we were playing politics. one group against the other. So that when money is voted, the money is diverted. That's just the truth.
And that's another aspect that I would like us to touch on. But let me go to Desmond right now. Yes, it's a good thing that the Nigerian government is, taking this step, a very, very brave step too, to listen to the voice of reason after so many years, especially represented by Ken Saro-Wiwa. One might just want to say then that Ken Saro-Wiwa's death was not in vain. But should this absolve the oil explorationists, Shell and all the rest of them from taking responsibility? Because Amnesty International has said, look, they must take responsibility for the spills and all the degradation that has gone on in the Niger Delta.
They have a lot to answer for, not just for the terrible, terrible degradation that went on there, because a lot of these spills were caused because substandard equipment, old equipment that had gone rusty was left there instead of changed. And this equipment could easily have been changed. The amounts of profit that is made by these people is phenomenal. Yes, definitely the sabotage had been going on, but if you have a rusty pipe, it's a lot easier to sabotage. So they definitely have to take a responsibility, not just for the despoilation of that area, but responsibility for what the product that they're selling has been done to our climate over the years. We now know that fossil fuel has been over-carbonizing our atmosphere. Climate change is real. Climate change is getting worse. If we don't stop the climate change, it shall become catastrophic, and we shall be handing on to our children a legacy of a calabash full of poison. But that's a little bit of another story. The reality is definitely they must take responsibility. There's no way out of that. But they're not the only ones that need to take responsibility. Because the huge question mark arises that during all this period, what were the leaders doing? When you're leading people, you're supposed to be representing their interests. Your people's livelihood has been totally decimated over the years, and you're still claiming that you're representing their interests. So it's a big indictment on all successive leaderships up until today. Finally, we're seeing a ray of light, we're seeing some hope, but it can only be real hope if it is continuous and if it is sustainable. So we are watching, and the voice of the people, they should be very careful now, because the Nigerian's voice is a voice that can bring about change. We've proven it, and change is a continuous factor.
Okay, yeah, talking about the Amnesty International, with the principle of polluter pays, when it came based on the recommendation of the UNEP, the Shell actually said they made some cleanup. But Amnesty International found out that the cleanup that they made was just on the surface. What is the guarantee now that even if this cleanup is carried out, it's going to be deep enough to effect the change that is required in that land?
Yes, well, I'm sure, as my brother in the studio will tell you, when that cleanup was done, indigent Soweto people were involved in it. So it's not as if it was just the Shell people themselves that were doing it alone. So other parties were indicted in that process of that cleanup. And what a terrible, hideous, nonsensical thing. It doesn't get much more wicked than that. You know that your actions have polluted this area. You know that the pollution of this area is poisoning the people, and not just the people, but the children. So you're poisoning the children to death. You have funds to go and do some remediation measure, and these funds are diverted, and it's not done properly. This is totally horrendous, and all the people in the chain are totally indicted. I think now, luckily, at least there is, they say the fear of a certain man is wisdom. I think you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of probity in the system now, and corruption doesn't get much worse than that. If people think they're going to get away with stealing things and doing a bad job of a cleanup that's going to save the lives of children, they better think again. And also, it's a lot easier to monitor now. because, you know, the whole social media situation is on. The young people of that land, they have smartphones, they can be watching them, they can be monitoring it, they can be sending off reports. And I think this is possibly one of the things that Chief in the studio there will possibly try to do with the young people, is get their own monitoring groups to watch these cleanups and make sure it is done properly. Again and again, I reiterate, we're talking about the lives of children, the lives of children. This must be done properly. Cannot allow
Indeed.
a bad job to be done.
Now, Johnny Coco, is this where this young militants who have not been engaged positively for so long that they're now taking up arms against government, is this where they should come in making sure that this is a job that is carried out properly? And beyond that, the expertise that is needed to sustain this cleanup, isn't this where these young people, men and women, should, you know, really be deployed?
Thank you very much. One thing we must not confuse: carrying guns and having brains are not the same. The militants themselves need to be rehabilitated because they've gone off the trajectory. What we are looking at today is what we call environmental sustainability. Hydrocarbons have caused a lot of problem there. Many of those who had hopes for their lives left. Activities there are zero. We don't even have these biodiversity anymore. So when you are going to clean up the place, it is just the first step. And of course, there are methods and means to know whether your cleanup is effective. After you've cleaned up, the next thing is what type of activities will go on there. I'll give you an example. Part of the cleanup is making sure that crops can grow. Part of the cleanup is making sure that fishes can swim in the water. Part of the cleanup is making sure that the people themselves are encouraged to stay in that land, having something productive to do and improving themselves. The man who has left could go and carry guns. What does he know about cleanup? So he has to be taken off the guns and brought back to the classroom and taught a skill, which was one of the core anchors of the amnesty program. But above all, we need sincerity. The issue is, thank God for the pedigree of the current president. I mean, there was a presidential implementation committee set up in 2012. What did they do? Were they not Nigerians? So why must it be when the present regime came before we now saw action on the ground?
Well, some might even want to say, look, just let's not look back. Let's move forward with this.
Maja Kutume has said it. The fear of one man is the beginning of wisdom. The truth remains, there is a lot of pollution. The vegetation is destroyed. The underground water, because they are interconnected. The Delta region is an interconnected region. The problem didn't start from Ogoni alone. The problem goes beyond. And the solution cannot be in Ogoni alone. It's a whole Niger Delta area problem.
Okay. Let's bring in Desmond in here. The Hydrocarbon Petroleum Resources Restoration Project, who is meant to be the spearhead, that's a unit under the Petroleum Resources Ministry, meant to be the spearhead for this cleanup. The difference between what we have today and what we had then, as Johnny Coco here was talking about the Presidential Committee, do you think what we have now is consultative enough to make the people own this project?
Yeah, because it's flexible. They can actually, the people have to own it. The people have to be part of it. There's no doubt about that. You're going to require a lot of manual activity, and even the mechanical activity that will be required there. It won't take long to train some of those young people how to use those machines and so on. And judging from the pronouncements of the current minister as well, who is a very, very strong driving force in this. She's been all over the place. She's been up to the desert areas. She's been to the coastal erosion. She's now right there in Ogoni land. Definitely, she has taken cognizance of the reality that the people have to have ownership of this. But the cleanup is being done very pragmatically, because I believe that one of the first interventions is going to be give the people potable water. And that it's not a very difficult thing to do, because they're done quite quickly with solar power, photovoltaics, good boreholes, filter systems, and just at least give the people of this area some nice clean water. And believe you me, when those wonderful people, and believe you me, they are wonderful people, because they have been blessed over the centuries. Chief will tell you the amount of flora and fauna in that area. Do you know that the Niger Delta is one of the most biodiverse wetland areas in the whole world? The amount of wonderful species of fish and different types of aquatic fauna and different types of flora, it is so profuse there. And those people have been having a wonderful lifestyle. I had a friend who he'd go to school, he'd catch fish on the way back without even stopping his canoe. And he'd walk to his village, pick up some roots.
Desmond,
yeah.
Just hold on a second. Let's remind our viewers on TVCE that you can continue to watch TVC Breakfast on TVC Nigeria on Concert Channel 190, DSTV 418, GoTV 45, and ACTV 510. Okay, I will allow Desmond to land where you were trying to make your point. Go ahead very quickly, please.
The picture, how wonderful the people
Yeah.
are.
Yes, and the pristine. Yes.
Pristine area, beautiful pristine area, totally despoiled. The people really had a great lifestyle there. So as soon as they see things like water, and in that particular area they are, within 5 days, they could easily give them potable water, boreholes, solar pumps. They're going to take ownership of this thing. They're going to realize, this thing is for real. And if the youth could be persuaded to be part of this and not allow themselves to be manipulated with some type of very wicked politics. Even if you have a point, and you might be fully justified and have some very good grievances, but there is no way that you can justify being worse than your enemy. If you're saying that the people polluting this place are your enemies, and then what you are doing is polluting the place anymore, then you're making yourself worse than them. So get the youth involved, get them involved, and the people take ownership of this thing, and it'll skyrocket. It'll work. We're so hopeful that this wonderful, beautiful, blessed area will start to come back to the way God originally planned it to be.
And that just brings me to the next question. I mean, something I've been trying to wrap my head around. Okay, maybe before we go on with that, I'd like Busolami to take on the next.
Indeed, just to let you know that this is not the first time issues affecting Ogoni land, and indeed Ogoni people have been discussed nationally. History has it that oil was first discovered in Ogoni land in 1958 before production was halted in the face of a highly successful violent protest campaigned by Ken Saro-Wiwa and of course the Masop people. Let's take you further and give you more information that will help you understand what we are talking about a beta. Indeed, we have a report was carried out, a 15-year period report was carried out between 1976 and 1991. And the report says there was a case of about 2,976 oil spills of about, just think about it, that's about 2.1 million barrels of oil just spilled all over the land of Ogoni. And one thing is the people responsible for it, 40% of this is done by a Royal or Dodge and of course Shell. And because of that, the plight of the Ogoni people first reached worldwide attention when Ken Saro-Wiwa, you remember him, Ken Saro-Wiwa and another 8 others who championed the cause of the cleanup of Ogoni land and letting the world know what is going on in Ogoni land. Don't forget, Ken Saro-Wiwa and 8 others were hanged by the then military dictatorship of Sani Abacha in 1990. 1995. So in spite of the billions of dollars of oil wealth extracted from their land, the vast majority of Ogoni people say they still lack access to electricity and pipe-borne water. Don't forget, Ngozi, I guess Desmond was talking about the deplorable state in that particular area, despite the huge amount of money extracted from that part of the world.
Yes.
So let's move forward now and see what we have next. Okay, so because of that, because of the agitation of the peaceful agitation of the people of that area, the polluter pays came up. And just before we went to that area, don't forget that in 2006, the federal government of Nigeria commissioned United Nations Environment Program, that's the UNEP, to carry out the environmental assessment of Ogoni land. The work was funded by Shell based on the polluter pays principle. That is, if you mess up the place,
you pay for it.
Clean up after yourself. So in 2011, the former president, then Goodluck Jonathan, of course, make sure that this report came, and the assessment of 200 locations was carried out by that UN organ, and it was discovered that quite a lot of mayhem was wreaked in that place. And of course, the UN came up and said it may take up to 30 years to rehabilitate Ogoni land. Our guest in the studio also mentioned it, that it's going to take quite a number of time, 20 to 30 years actually, to clean up Ogoni land. And of course, the first 5 years of rehabilitation will require funding of about $1 billion. So the UN organ came up with quite a number of recommendations, a number of emergency measures to curb what is going on in that particular communities. Those who were exposed to grave health risk through contaminated drinking water. The emergency measures included ensuring. Now, the first thing we want to take a look at here is, of course, identify hydrocarbon infected wells and say to the people, danger zone, don't go there, and provide pipe-borne water to the people. I keep going back to Desmond because he said most of those things, that just give the people water and the world will be better for it.
That's the most basic thing.
Indeed, and of course, the UN came up with that recommendation. And beyond that, survey of all drinking water wells around that area. So that means even the wells that are contaminated, they should survey the drinking water around that area to make sure the water is fit for consumption. And like we talked about benzene, that the oil area, the drinking water in that area, most of them have been contaminated by benzene, which is about 900 more than what is required according to the World Health Organization. So the UN organ came up and said, in fact, there should be a health center to check the health of the people of Igale, who drinking water, of course, have been contaminated, and they asked for survey to be carried out. And post signs around all sites where contamination was found and inform communities not to walk through or engage in activities at the site. Post signs where hydrocarbon was observed in the surface water and inform people not to bathe in or fish in those waters, and inform all families whose rainwater tested positive for hydrocarbons and advise them not to consume the water. And of course, don't forget, they also asked that they should mount an awareness-raising campaign to inform people of the dangers of artisanal refinery. Now, Amnesty International carried out quite a number of research as well, and they said Shell must not be allowed to shirk its responsibility to clean up decades of oil product pollution in the Niger Delta. Now, this comes ahead of the commencement of the federal government's cleanup program of Ogoni land. Let me tell you something here. In 1985, President Muhammadu Buhari then was in Ogoni land, and he commissioned a fish pond. Now, as it is, the fish pond is dead, so it's a good thing. So it's a good thing that he's going back there to restore the ecosystem in that particular land. It said there were at least 130 oil spills from Shell operations in that particular area. In 2015, adding that under Nigerian law, companies were obliged to clean up whatever they cause. And in April the 29th, President Muhammadu Buhari announced his government will start the cleanup program on June the 2nd, which is today. So the president is expected to launch the cleanup exercise himself today. But quite a number of questions are really, people have been asking, what will be the template of this cleanup? So I'd like to ask you, what do you think should be the template of this cleanup? We understand that it's going to take between 20 and 30 years, but for what we have now, what do you think should be the template?
Thank you. The stage we are is basic cleanup. Now, the cleanup itself involves carrying out remediation on the land. And as it is, we're going to remediate the land, the water, and likely the air around there, because there's a lot of hydrocarbon floating that people are breathing in, causing health challenge. So, in the remediation process, the first stage is to actually determine where to start, because the study has actually pointed out the areas that are contaminated. So it's a matter of demarcation. Okay, we'll start from here, we'll end there at this stage, then at the next stage we'll continue from there. And don't forget, the real problem we're having now is that even the groundwater is seriously contaminated. So we're not looking at a surface cleanup. No, we're not. There'll be a lot of earth movement, a lot of soil refinement, a lot of pulling out and bringing in, a lot of chemical applied, a lot of fertilizer applied, you know, a lot of bionutrients applied, and a lot of measurement to see how well it is going. The issue is that once the land starts, you know, restoring, the process continues. You will not need monitoring as you will need at the beginning. But one thing is clear, you mentioned it, illegal refining. The oil industry activities there, all those old pipelines and facilities, those control over the oil production process, it must be strictly enforced. In other words, pollution at this stage must stop.
Indeed. Let me even bring Desmond Majakodumi in right now. The question then is, Desmond, is it possible that after 20 to 30 years that Ogoni land and indeed the whole of the Niger Delta will go back to its pristine state before oil exploration started? And if we're really to sustain this, the laws that we have right now, are they even strong enough to ensure that after this cleanup is done, or even in the process of doing the cleanup, that, you know, more damage is not done to the environment?
Very, very, very good questions, both of them. Yeah, the laws are there, but I don't think the laws take into cognizance the overall negative impact of this. Because, as we said right at the beginning, we're looking at almost a subtle genocide against particularly the young children of this area. That's what hydrocarbon does. It is poisonous, you know, in all its ramifications. You can't drink it, it'll kill you. You eat it, it'll kill you. Even when you refine it and you break it down into its energy-giving constituents of diesel and petrol, the fumes of burning that is also toxic. It will kill you. Those fumes are even toxic to the atmosphere. It's destroying the atmosphere, creating global warming. So, you know, pollution, laws against pollution need to definitely be reviewed and take into cognizance the real seriousness of pollution, especially hydrocarbon pollution. Number one, it has to become a very, very, very serious thing indeed. In terms of in 30 years' time, can they ever be brought back to their pristine condition? This is why we're saying take polluting the environment very seriously, because in a lot of those areas, it can never come back to its pristine condition. Not just polluting the mangrove. The same thing with things like the forest. If you destroy a forest totally and you burn it, it can restore itself, it can regenerate, but it'll never come back. You lose your incredible web of biodiversity. You know, this is something that has been developed and grown over eons and eons, something that was put in place by an extremely intelligent creator, an incredible web of biodiversity. You'll never get that full biodiversity back. And in some of the areas, unfortunately, where they caught fire, when the oil caught fire, the mud, it gets caked. It's almost like concrete. So that there's some areas that will be totally lost, but definitely with a diligent activity of remediation using the best and latest technology, and we have to filter out the good technology from the bad, because there's some technologies that don't really do much, and there's others that will do it in a far more amicable sort of way. With a diligent cleanup process, a lot of those areas can be restored, and with good technology we can probably give the people potable water quite easily, even though the groundwater has been badly contaminated and some of the sub-aquifer levels have been contaminated. But we have machinery, you know, if you can drill for oil so deep, you can get good water for the people. So there's hope.
All right, many thanks for your time on TVC Breakfast this morning. Desmond Maja Kodumi. Basically, it's all about the people.